Okay, welcome everybody. This is our actual first speaker of our fall speaker series here in our bug user group. And so it's really great to have all of you. We will get some stragglers probably coming in here. We've got a couple classes that end around this time and people are grabbing dinner and such. So just be aware of that. If you have any questions, I'll feel free to post them in the chat, or you can just kind of pipe in here if you want Wade to go over something specific. But we'll start off here with introductions, and then we'll get into what we're going to be doing tonight. One of the things that I thought too would be a great thing is I know some of you are actually doing site logistics planning here in your classes. I know some of the people that have my class are actually doing site logistics planning in the next couple of weeks. And so we might have a situation here, Wade, at the end, if there's people that want maybe to take a look at their site logistics plan, we can share screen and do that. There might be the opportunity to do some actual hands one-on-one mentoring, okay? So let's do introductions first. So the first introduction I'd like to do is to introduce our speaker. So Wade, maybe you could just wave your hand there, and just want to introduce you. Wade Sousa is here from it's C4G Construction, right? Out of Visalia.
4CG.
4CG. You know what?
Yep.
I get this confused because there's a group that I have a team name that's so close to it, and I always flip it around. So you'll have to remind me of that. So welcome, Wade, and we'll give you a little more time to do an actual introduction here. We also have Garrett here from Clearing, and I don't know if he can turn on his webcam or not, but Garrett, you'll see here, is from Clearing. He's one of our industry partners here that often comes in. He's an estimator at Clearing Corporation, and so he's here to kind of partner with us on this. And we also have our chair of our department here tonight, Wei Wu. He's listening in. He's got kids in the background here, so he's not going to be turning on his web camera for the session, but he'll be listening in because he's going to be working with site logistics planning here in one of our other classes. So I wanted to welcome everybody that are professionals in here and staff. So welcome everybody. And let's just take a few minutes to introduce our bug leaders. Okay, so let's just go around the Zoom room here, and I'll just kind of popcorn style let you guys introduce yourself. So Daniel, why don't you start off first and just introduce yourself? Say hi.
Hi everybody, my name is Daniel, senior CM student, expect to graduate in the spring, and joined Bug to learn more from speakers like Wade and get some more in-depth knowledge on Bluebeam.
Great. Well, we're glad to have you, Daniel. And Karndeep, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name's Karndeep. I'm a junior. This is my I've just newly joined this Bluebeam group and I've enjoyed it so far. I've learned a lot more about tips and tricks from these professionals, and I'm glad everybody made it tonight.
Thanks, Karndeep. We're glad to have you. And Matt, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, my name is Matt Forney. I'm a junior in the CM department, and I've been on the bug team since January, so it's been good so far.
Good. Well, thanks, Matt. We're glad to have you. Jacob, why don't you introduce yourself?
How's it going, guys? Yeah, my name is Jacob. I'm a senior. I've been in bug. I joined last semester, and it's always just nice to just learn more things about Bluebeam because it's used a lot in the industry. So that's kind of why I joined.
Great. Well, we're glad to have you, Jacob. And Manny, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi guys, my name is Manny. I joined Bug last semester as well, and I joined to learn more from industry partners like Wade and a lot more of our guest speakers. There's a lot of knowledge out there, and I think it's great to learn about Bluebeam.
Great. We're glad to have you, Manny. And so let's do this. I just wanted to give everybody a reminder that in the chat, if you are coming in or came in a little bit late, make sure you put your name in the chat. We prefer to have your web camera on and be actively engaged here. Please put your name in the class that you're attending for. That would be great. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Wade. So Wade, I just wanted to mention that Wade actually contacted the CM department. He's a graduate of Colorado State and wanted to help us out with our ABC team, our competition team. And so we're trying to get him more involved here in our department. And we are very excited to learn from you, Wade. And so I just want to turn it over to you, and so you can tell us more about yourself and go ahead and start the presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my name is Wade. I went to school at Colorado State. We had a construction management degree there. And then I worked in Denver for a couple of years and recently moved back here. I was from Tipton, California, which is about 20 minutes south. So from the Central Valley, and then really liked doing commercial construction in Denver, and actually interned at 4CG about 5 years ago, and then was working on some projects, and this was the first company that I applied for coming back, and they're starting to switch from agriculture to commercial, so just kind of worked out perfect. It's really cool. There's a lot of good project managers that have been in industry for a long time here, as well as like one of them that I learn under almost every day. His grandpa was a builder in the area, his dad was, and now he is. So a lot of good experience, a lot of good people to learn from, good place for someone like me, younger in their career, to be at right now.
Well, we're really glad to have you, Wade, and for taking the initiative to contact us. It's nice for a change.
Yeah, this is nice. I never had, most of the stuff I learned on Bluebeam was just pressing buttons and see what they do, working in industry. So if this was something in college, with industry professionals coming in, definitely something I would have taken advantage of if we offered it. So it should be exciting. I'll try to show you guys what some of the buttons do.
And are you able to share screen there, Wade?
Yep.
Okay.
So again, I'll just touch on the company for a minute. Again, we're based in Visalia. Most of our work is here in Visalia. We do agriculture work, digesters up and down the state, and then we do a lot of TIs and ground up rebuilds as well. It's really interesting. I wasn't a part of the pre-con process as much in Denver, and now I am, and it's cool how many different projects you touch when you're doing pre-construction. And then I'll translate some of those pre-con projects to full-time construction management. This is an old courthouse in downtown Visalia that we turned into a hotel. But yeah, pretty sweet. So site plans actually pulled up.
Wait, your screen's not sharing.
Oh. Thanks for that.
There you go.
I got Bluebeam up.
Yes.
Perfect. Is that on the right screen? Can you guys see it? I don't have like the Bluebeam.
Yeah, it's on Bluebeam right now.
Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, site plan can be used for multiple things, for phasing it, for logistics, for crane plans, lots of different things that you can use them for. It depends how many phases you want to put into your project. You can really get as detailed as you want. Typically the phases are spread out through different mobilizations. I pulled up this one. It's one that I had done in college, but it really goes into detail, and I'll touch on all these details that are in this site plan and kind of go through this. It should give you a general idea of just about everything you can do. I'll show you things that, I did back then in college and things that I would look for now. So this is a project called Edgewood High School. It's in a town called Covina that's down south in LA. So we were tasked with making a site logistics plan for it. One thing that you noticed right away was we had to build it during school, so we couldn't utilize these school parking lots. And so we had to figure out a way to basically get everyone to site, everyone that's building the actual project, without interfering and putting them in the same parking lot as high school students. It's just one site logistics thing that you're always going to have to figure out, is parking for your subs. This is a really big deal. Like working in downtown Denver, the companies would pay so much money to just be able to put their GC crews inside parking garages, and some cities charge $7,000 per parking spot that you rent, like if you're doing a construction project for a year, just like for street parking. It's really something that you're going to deal with no matter where you build projects, is just figuring something out. And so we just went on Google Earth. Again, on these site logistic plans, I'll touch on it a couple times, but Google Earth is this awesome tool that we have now. And, earlier they probably would have to actually drive around, but we're just able to Google Earth it. We found that this is an LDS church right here. We made the assumption, and no one could prove us wrong, because again, this was more of a class assignment. So maybe this wouldn't have worked in real life, but maybe it did. We made the assumption that they weren't using this during the weekdays. It's a church. We made the assumption that they're using it mostly on Sundays and not as much during normal business hours. So we decided to make this our parking lot. That, of course, is dependent on discussions with them and everything. So again, just a Google search, looking around, designating that this would be something that you would send out in a bid package or during the contract phase when you're just getting all of your subcontractors on the same page of, hey, this is where it's okay to park. You don't want your subcontractors pulling in here or parking on the streets in the neighborhood, and then from day one you're in trouble with your owner because you didn't coordinate that. So definitely something that's important to do. You can see up here we have a legend. We have a muster point, and the muster point is basically if there's an emergency, this is where everyone's meeting, and that should be established beforehand. Everyone on site should know that, whether that's through an safety orientation meeting, which is something that's held to subcontractors the first day that they get on site, or if it's posted on a job board. You should always specify where your muster point is going to be at, and just make that clear. It's a big safety factor. One thing looking back on this is we had these arrows going, and right here, there's not a crosswalk right here. And so we kind of just, and all these arrows were on this sidewalk. So you kind of just assume that they jaywalked right here, or maybe went to the crosswalk. But another thing that you want to specify on your site logistics plan is just safety standards. When I worked in downtown Denver, I remember I was on this street and me and my friend were grabbing lunch and stuff, and it was just right across from where his project was at. And so we go, and he's on the other side of the street, and there's no cars coming, and he won't jaywalk. And so I'm like, dude, come on, let's grab lunch. And he's just right across the street from his site. And he just went across, and it's because his company had a policy to where if they jaywalked the crosswalk that's right next to their site, they would get a safety violation. They could get kicked off site. No pay, obviously, for the rest of the day if you're kicked off site. So just something to consider. You want to make sure that not only do you find somewhere safe for them to park, but also somewhere where it's here, I'm pulling this up for you guys right now. I mean, this is 16th Street in Colorado. Really just buses go on this for the most part, and he had to wait for the crosswalks. It's kind of ridiculous, but yeah, so you could see, like, even on this Google car, these people are just walking right in front of it. So just funny, but yeah, something you want to look out for, just how you're getting people to the site safely. Another big point. Another part of
Wade,
this, yeah.
can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
There's a couple things that I have a question on that other students may have questions. Is, can you explain, like, how do you decide where to put your muster point? And then the other thing is too, is it better to use a site plan, or is it better to use the actual site plan, or is it better to use a Google Earth, and why?
Yeah, the muster point is just somewhere where, like for this, at a school, a main reason for a muster point would be a school shooting, natural disaster. This is California, so we're not worried about a hurricane as much. We're more worried about getting away from the school and just having somewhere where you take attendance after some type of emergency. So you just want to make sure it's a little away from the site. Some muster points are across the street. They could be right here in this parking lot. We just decided to put it back in that parking lot where everyone's car is at. It's basically somewhere where you're taking attendance of everyone on site. If you're running a pretty good checklist of who's on site, then like all the foremen for the subcontractors should know who they have on site every day and everything. So you're just taking a head count there. As far as the Google Earth, you can use both, and you'll see this is just an overall one. We didn't have a construction drawing that had the surrounding neighborhoods on this. And so for the overall site plan on how to get to these two different projects that we were doing, we decided to use a Google Earth photo. Typically, the construction drawings are easier to put to scale, which is nice when you're deciding how big of a trailer you can fit on site and everything else. You do have, I'll show you some options on how to scale a Google Earth image and just make it so that you could scale it on a Bluebeam PDF, because Bluebeam does give us the opportunity to do that, which is another cool feature. So I'll continue into the next page. So like Christy was saying, now we have our phase 1 site. This is based on a demo sheet. And so we basically are taking this demo page and we're inputting shapes. I keep my shape tools right here. You can go to your views, I believe, and you could drop down every single tool around so that they're easily accessible. Something I highly encourage everyone to do is go to this help bar, go to this keyboard shortcuts guide, and learn these shortcuts. This is a very useful tool. It'll not only just show you exactly like what you're able to do in Bluebeam, as far as like even this aligning all your markups to the right or left. There's so many things that you really don't know how to do. This guide right here actually does a really good job of organizing stuff, like documents, navigation, and then showing you shortcuts so that you kind of don't need as many buttons obscuring your vision when you're using the desktop application. So for this was the project that was on the south side. This is the music center right here. And so we did an area of construction in orange. And so we're doing the parking lot. This is roughly where the music center is going to be. We included a spoils pile because this is activities that we're doing are demolition, clear and grub, gradients, foundation, utilities. So the spoils would be for all the clear and grub and some of the grading if it's a cut site or a fill site. We did a dumpster right here. And then you try to line those up so that there's space, so that they're to scale, and try to make it clear on the path of travel for the dumpster. One thing that you want to do is do minimal damage to your curb and gutter. Some sites you'll drive right over your curb and gutter during your phase of construction, and then you have to go back and pay for that. And it's hard to fit that in your budget. Typically that comes out of the GC's dollars that they're supposed to be saving. We put everything as far as the porta-johns. Like I said, dumpster recycling can be found right here. Job trailer, our flow of traffic areas, our control points. So this is where surveyors come out and take their elevations. This is something that you kind of want in the corner of your site where it's not going to be touched very often. And it'll have a benchmark elevation. The orange is representing gates, so entrance points. And you want to specify those again just with your path of travel. SWIP, a silt fence around the site. SWIP is something that's pretty strict, pretty much everywhere. You just want to make sure that you're not getting any dirt or oil or anything inside the city storm drains. And then site fence and temp utilities. This was a while ago, so I don't remember if we found something to pull temp utilities from, but that's a pretty long pull. You don't always have the option for temp utilities, but when you can, it's always nice.
And Wade,
yep.
I have a couple questions. I mean, just they're simple questions that maybe you could describe. There may be some students that are not as familiar with these terms, but maybe you could describe what a control point is. And then when you, and what we mean by a spoil pile.
Yeah. So whenever you have a grading plan, you're gonna decide if it's cut or fill. Cut means that you're taking your net total dirt that you used to have on site, but now like your new net total dirt that will be there once the building's all done. If it's cut, then you're taking dirt off. If it's filled, then you actually need more dirt than what's already on site. And it just depends how the civil engineers design the grading plan and what exactly the site needs. So at this one, I'm guessing was more cut site. And so they needed to haul dirt off. So they actually had a spoils pile location just designated kind of away from where the building pad would be and areas of construction. Another thing when placing this job site trailer is you have different phases of construction. And this is going to be on here. Basically, it'll probably come off a month or two before construction's done. So when you're deciding where to place this or anything for that matter, you want to kind of take note of where your new curb and gutter is going to go, where your sidewalk is going to go. And a lot of times this is placed in a landscape area if you have one that's big enough for that. It totally just depends on the project site that you have. Sometimes you can get it, you know, a little outside of the area of construction entirely, which is nice. I've worked on a project in Denver where it was like the next building over. So there was our construction site, there was a business that was already going on, and then we had a little slot where someone owned the land, and we put in an offer to lease this basically dirt lot and put our construction trailer on it for the term of maybe 18 months. That's another negotiation that you have a lot. If you see that there's a dirt lot next to you as a contractor, you're typically finding out who the owner of that dirt lot is. For example, this is one project that I'm doing here in Visalia. And so the satellite view is really cool right now because you could actually see where we put all of our underground plumbing, as well as our foundations. So we own up until about right here. And so this is a pretty tight site. We do have some storage right here on this north end, but we made some bullpens right here. So the owner of this lot right here was actually willing to let us rent this, and we put most of our lumber right here. That's a negotiation that we had to have. This lot, I'm surprised there's a pile of dirt there because the owner, this was probably the end of it, the owner didn't really let us put any materials there. And so that's just something where how it goes. So our fence right now actually extends this way, and then it'll go like this. And this is where we keep a lot of materials, and then it'll wrap the site. But yeah, again, just going into that negotiation aspect of your site logistics. This is typically done, you know, right as soon as you get the job, when you're figuring stuff out, or even when you're still bidding maybe against other general contractors. You're just trying to figure out where you're going to put stuff. So you're calling landlords, owners of land around you, and something to definitely hop on and utilize. We live in the Central Valley, and a lot of work in Visalia. There are lots right now that are going to be next to it because a lot of it's developing outward. So kind of exciting, kind of nice. There are construction sites called zero laydown sites. And so I'll show you one that I was on. And so
Wait, let me ask, are a lot of zero laydown sites where there's just less storage for you to use? Or like, are there like smaller layouts?
yeah, so this is one that I had in Denver. This is actually the one where I was talking about. So our job site trailer was right here. This is just a commercial building that's in business. And then we were building this apartment complex right here. So we didn't own anything around this actual building footprint, right? So this is a zero laydown site. And so you don't really have anywhere to put that material. And so for a lot of phases, that material is being dropped off the same day that it's installed, all the way while it's built up for the most part. We're lucky on this one to where this is a parking garage entrance, and 2 floors down is parking garage. And so we were actually able to put a lot of finished materials after we were built up, drywall, cabinets, and everything, we were able to kind of organize that within the parking garage at some point. But for the most part, when we were going vertical, it was zero laydown. You're going to see that a lot in big cities. I'm sure even if you're building in Fresno, you're going to run into a lot of projects where you just don't really have room. And basically the strategy to beat that is you're going to want to just deliver stuff same day.
In Wade, it's almost like a just-in-time delivery. So August, like, because I know you're from Oakland, so the deliveries literally just get dropped off, you know, and then you'll see it. I see it more, Wade, and I don't know if you've experienced this yet or not, but both in the city and if there's like one-way streets, I think the just-in-time, I see more of that zero laydown. You got a postage stamp basically to deal with. I know up in the city, it's like that in San Francisco, LA, even some of you, if you spend a lot of time in San Luis Obispo, I know there's a couple projects down on Marsh Street in San Luis Obispo that are one-way streets. And literally there's no place to lay down. And so they've, the scheduling for those jobs are really tight and the logistics plans are really tight.
Actually, to add on to that, I did see a project in San Francisco that was very closed off around many other buildings. Like you said, like it had like one-way road, and they ended up having a lot of materials inside of cargo freights that they borrowed, and they would take them down or like lay them next to each other.
We have, oh yeah, go ahead. August, we actually store some of our material in, we call them C trains. So like for that smaller apartment complex I was showing you in Visalia, we're actually storing some material in those as well. It's not uncommon, it's not super widely practiced, but it just depends on what you're able to do. So like we have one C train right here.
And Wade, how do you account, going back to this demolition site plan where you've got the dumpsters and the porta potties, how do you know how many to put on a site? Like, especially like if you have a large site.
It depends on, maybe how much vegetation you had to take down here, maybe what phase you're in. I'm actually curious, like I said, I haven't been on this site plan in a while, so I'm curious if we ever reduce the number of dumpsters. They're pretty easy to just take off and not have back, or particularly, like I think right now you're seeing like 2 or 3 weeks to get a dumpster on site. So say that you're gonna start doing drywall in a bit, and the drywall phase, there's a lot of waste, and so the dumpsters might fill up faster. And so maybe it balances out for you to get one extra dumpster and dump less. It just depends what budget's out. Porta potties, I don't know if there's a number that you base it off of.
I think there's a formula, because Garrett and I were talking about this because it affects productivity. I mean,
Yeah.
my specialty is scheduling, and you don't want them going to one side of the site to go to the bathroom. You want to have multiple porta potties so that it reduces the lack of productivity and they're more efficient.
Yeah. I'm trying to find one project I was on in Denver, and it's pretty common for them to crane a porta potty onto like the 15th floor while you're building slab on deck, moving up, depends how high up you get. I don't know what floor that starts, but as they just keep tower craning the building up, they'll add one extra, and then maybe they still have the 10 downstairs and everything, but I've seen that before.
Hey, wait, I got a few questions.
Yeah.
So first, if you could speak a little bit on, like, I noticed like your color coding and then like your hatch. If you could speak on like if there's any like universally acceptable like hatch or color codes for like site layout, whether it's like orange or green. And then my second question is if you could speak a little bit on how accurately you need to scale your site layout trailer and your trash can, like not just making a fat rectangle and throwing it down, you know?
Yep. I would try to get it as accurate as possible. So I'll go into the design on like how to make this a little bit. So Hatch gives us a couple options. Nothing's too universal for the most part. Typically these dash lines are like remove. You know, that they'll copy some architectural details. You just have a brick wall, weave, grid. Nothing's too universal. Nothing universal on the color either. I use the dots for dirt fairly often as well. One thing that we didn't use was one of these is site fence. And so you have line options here. And one of them is actually fence lines, circles or squares. And this is how architects draw them. And then you, on Bluebeam, you can actually adjust just the spacing in those. You can make it look, you know, more realistic so that you could tell that purple line apart from, you know, what your SWIP is and where your temporary utilities are coming through. So different annotations have different things you can do. They'll call some out like an insulation, a hot water, gas, and then just some dash. And again, these mimic a lot of what architectural lines there are.
Sweet, thanks.
Yeah. One thing I'll touch on this too is this legend. It looks good and everything for a presentation, but it's definitely not the most efficient way to do this. Bluebeam gives you the option to make a legend. And the way I typically do these is I'll go in, I'll take this, there's a gear right here, and then you change this to the name. So you can name it area of construction. Once you change that subject, it'll save that. And so now I'll go to this thing that we just have as site fencing. And then you can click on multiple things. And then when you make your legend, which is a right click, create legend. I didn't click on the right one, but I'll add this to the legend. So now it says area construction. So it's taking that name that I input here into the subject, and then it'll actually populate that. And so now the difference between these two is that I have a quantity, and this is nice if you're doing a takeoff and have a count, but I really don't need those for what I'm using this for right now. And so on this legends tool, if you go back to your gear, there's an edit column, and you can choose all these different things that are options on your annotations. And so I don't want the quantity and I don't want the unit of measurement. And so I'm going to remove those. And now it looks a little bit cleaner. I could fill the background and make it white. And then I can even add an outline to it like that one. This is how I typically make my legends. It's a little more efficient, you know, it automatically spaces these. For the most part, it makes them pretty well. And, you know, whoever made this, it was probably just a pain for them to line all this up. So I definitely recommend that method for making legends. And again, the legends tool is something that even I'm not super familiar with everything I can do on it, but I do know that just editing these columns, you can get a lot of different stuff. You can change the title too, so. And then it'll auto-populate that. It's just a faster, cleaner way to do this. And basically what you want to do is just everything that you put down, you want to go through and name it. All right, so I'll move on to this phase 2. So
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So do you ever use the tool chest?
Yes. Very, very rarely do I use the tool chest, but I do use it for estimating or quantity takeoffs, I guess. So you can see what I have in mind right now are mostly just custom counts. And basically what that is I'll take, like whenever I'm doing an electrical takeoff or something, which I was doing today, I'll show you how to make one of these. So the count tool, This is getting a little off subject, but it's still very useful if you ever do quantity takeoffs. The count tool is something that'll give you the option for check marks and everything. But sometimes I'm going to have 20 different types of things that I'm counting if I'm doing a actual takeoff or something on a page. And so what I'll do is you press G, which is actually snapshot. I believe you can also access it here. And these will tell you what keys give you these access. So I'll press G, I'll go through, I'll paste it. This is another useful button right here. This is a blend button. So what this is doing is every color that's in here, it'll populate. So there's like 10 different types of black. So I want, when I take this off, for it to show up as red, and maybe I have something else showing up as blue for like a different item. Once you have that mostly red to where you want it, you go down. This is basically the only time I use my tool chest, is I'll add this to my tool chest. It'll pop up here. I'll right click that. It gives you a couple options. You can duplicate it. You can create a count. And so then I'd go through and say, just say this is an outlet, you know, and I have outlets like all throughout the building. I'll just take that count. And then again on this legend tool, I'll show you. I named the count outlet. And then I'll right click it. I'll add it to a legend. And then it'll actually populate in your legend that exact snapshot that we originally took, and then tell you how many counts you just took. That was a lot of buttons, but this is recorded, so it could be, that's just a way that I like to use count on Bluebeam. Kind of a crazy workaround to get to that, but pretty useful. That's the main thing that I use my tool chest for. Other than that, I don't use it too often. Okay, so for this one, phase 2, I was right, we did add dumpsters. And so we're showing that dumpster recycling. Looks like we added one porta-john, maybe just more people on site. When you're doing earthwork, you typically don't have too many people on site. They're just driving that heavy machinery around. And then when you start framing or doing anything else, there's going to be a lot more guys. We kept our flow of traffic, but now we're actually using this whole parking lot as opposed to before. We added a gate right here. Don't know what these are, if they're like protecting them is what I'm assuming. We didn't label that though. So just something you want to watch out. You want to do the least amount of damage outside your construction zone as possible. Lay down area, so this is going to be for framing material. And then we put some crane locations. There's a possibility at some point in your program that you go through what a pick plan is. And I'll go through it a little bit on one of these pages as well. But yeah, then we list out what activities we're going to do. This is phase 2. You can correlate it to your schedule that you build on just how long it's going to be like this. The main thing that it's showing is right now we have where we're putting these laydown areas. We obviously can't keep these forever because eventually we're going to have to do some landscaping and site work. And then it's kind of just showing we're replacing our cranes to do these picks. The reason it's phased different is just when you're adding stuff differently. It looks like our site trailer is maintaining the same spot. It looks like here it's not really in the way of any of this parking lot. It's just going to affect some of the site work that is most likely phased for the end of the project. So again, I don't remember entirely, but we'll see if we like maybe even move this site trailer off with a little bit of time left.
Hey, Wade,
Yeah.
I have a question. On your jobs like this, and I don't know if you've experienced this yet, because you're pretty young, but have you ever been on a job where it's, you've got union and non-union labor and you've got to account for a logistics plan having two different gates for the union and non-union workers.
I've heard about that. I haven't done a job where I've done both. I've done healthcare, where I've used union, and then for the most part, I don't have a whole lot of experience outside of healthcare with union or mixing union and non-union. But I have heard that you do need separate entrances.
And so you would basically have two different, like almost like two different haul routes on the job.
For hauling materials, or
Well, you know, you have, if you have a two gate system, you know, and they go in and out of the gates, is it just the entrance gate or would it be entrance and exit gate? Maybe Garrett knows too. I don't know if he's here listening.
They would be dual purpose gates. So one would be
Okay.
designated for entrance and exit for the union people, and then one would be entrance exit for private.
I see. So
Yep.
you would have two separate ones then.
Yes, completely
Okay.
separate. You can't have them share gates whatsoever.
That's what I thought. Okay, so that it's something to consider when you're setting up your job. If you do have non-union and union workers, you guys, when you get out into the industry.
You see it a lot for prevailing wage work.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, it's I do have some CM 124 students in here. Some of you that are in here, some of you that are non-construction folks. You'll start in this next section in 124 learning about union and non-union work. So I think you'll find that interesting, you know, in our next section in 124. I just wanted to do a little logistical announcement. I've had a couple students come in late. You guys are not late. I know that some classes end just at this time and my chat is not working and you've chatted me and I'm not ignoring you. I just wanted to let you know everything's good to go. Just put your name and the class that you're in the chat. And then, you know, just listen. If you have questions, feel free to ask questions. So I just wanted to make that quick announcement.
okay. This is phase 3. Again, correlating schedule, finishes, hardscapes, MEP testing, MEP trim. What you'll notice is because we're doing those hardscapes, we moved our trailer onto our parking lot. I'm assuming this was paved in phase 2, and now we're just putting it on top of the asphalt. It's out of the way so that we can perform this work. Same with all of our dumpsters and our porta-johns. We put them in the parking lot. Sometimes you can do parking lots in multiple lifts, and so they'll do first couple inches and then they'll do all their construction activities. It'll kind of mess it up and then they'll do another lift. That's not always done. Sometimes you don't get as good of a finished product, but if you're phasing stuff on top of it, that's one way to do that. Other than that, not too many things changed here. You'll see there's no longer any crane pick areas. All the site drop-offs stayed the same. We didn't designate any material laydown areas. You could probably store a fair amount of it in the building at this point when you're doing these finishes. And then if you have stuff that's more weather resistant, maybe you can find areas around the hardscapes. Just something else that could have been added there. So this is the pool. It's more or less the same. I'll try to go through these a little bit faster and give you guys some room for questions because I do have a little bit more stuff I want to show you. Same thing, we're just coordinating this. Area construction. This is outline of some of the buildings that we're doing. On this one, traffic flow for canopy steel. So for our steel deliveries, we want to put them pretty close to where we're building our canopy. That was right here. I believe there was one right here as well. You'll see what they did here is they just drew a rectangle and they blocked this site plan out. I don't like how this is loose. So if I know that I don't want to ever touch this rectangle again, you can do two things. It's Control Shift M, or you can go here and you can flatten this. And then when I'm clicking around on my arrows, I can never click that rectangle again. If I, there's a way to unflatten it through the buttons, but Control Shift U will unflatten it. And then I can mess around with this again. So just depends what if you want to move this around, if you want something kind of out of your way, that's a good way to do it. Another way that I get stuff out of my way, you can see that they did the same thing right here. They didn't flatten that. That's fine. If I want something gone for good, you go to Edit, PDF Content. I use these a lot to edit documents. So you have a cut, snapshot, and erase. So I just don't even need any of this on my site plan. So I'm going to erase it. And that's just no longer a part of the document. There's not really a way to get that back unless I Control Z it right now. So if I know, I'll just get rid of title blocks a lot and clean stuff up. Again, that's over here in the edits, and then PDF content. And I use these a lot. I'll show you another example of using them. Very powerful tool in Bluebeam. Continue on. Typical traffic flow. This is probably getting a little too tight, but they want to get to this laydown area a little closer from the street. So when I presented this was for my ABC competition team. They said that they actually had to demo a building right here, and they had a big problem with the homeless people. So something you want to do is just make sure your material's kind of closer to where a truck can't even easily get backed up into. And you just want to keep all your materials safe if you are storing it outside, whatever that may be. Dumpsters stored right here, easy access for them to get picked up and taken away. You kind of want to angle them so that the truck has enough clearance to get in there, back up, and go away. Looking back, if I knew about the problem with the homeless, I probably wouldn't put my job site trailer right here. Real easy for them to jump a fence. I've heard about them breaking windows, and then someone put bars on a window, and then they actually like cut a hole in the bottom of the job site trailer and broke in again, took all their IT equipment. They'll get in if they want to. So just trying to make sure you put stuff in a safe location, maybe out of sight, out of mind if you can. And again, this was a pool. I believe it's like the first Olympic-sized swimming pool in the area or something. So big deal.
Wade, did they have you take off the pool for the ABC competition?
Yeah, we actually hopped on a phone call with the maker because it was made in Italy. And so,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, so they gave us the manufacturer for the pool, and they were actually nice enough to, hop on a mock phone call with us. And so when we got there and we presented to those judges, we could talk all about the pool manufacturer and stuff. And that's kind of something that blew the judges' socks off.
Oh, interesting. We'll have to pick your brain about that because I want to say it, Matt, I don't know if you can hear me, but was the last problem, did it have a pool?
I do not believe so.
Okay, I'm thinking about our hotel project, but I was like, I'm surprised that they had you take off a pool. So that's interesting.
So is it a fiberglass pool, Wade?
A what?
Fiberglass pool, if it was shipped from overseas?
I don't remember it. All I remember is it's like Olympic size Italian, like these Italian made or something like that. So it was a big deal for like the school in the area for the actual pool and stuff. And yeah, it was kind of funny. So something else that we did is we did delivery routes for both sites. Put the directions listed out here. This is probably a little less common unless you know that you're going through a bunch of neighborhoods, which this school is, and you just want to show them the best way to basically not bring their delivery trucks, into the wrong cul-de-sac. A lot of truck drivers now have Google Maps. It probably isn't as big of a deal, but if you want to avoid stuff and avoid truck drivers going through stuff, a good way to do it is just utilize Bluebeam. This is just a snapshot of Google Maps, and then just using the arrow tool, which is just A, and then you can edit it. You can edit how big the arrowhead is, and then long. And then once you have one that you like, you can copy paste it and just keep going. But yeah, I think there's probably 7 pages here. So then this is the other site. These are all when they're leaving. I believe the intent here was to try to, for the deliveries, try to get them to do as many left-hand turns as possible, and the least amount of right-hand turns. It doesn't actually look like they did that, but typically that'll make it easier for a truck driver. I wanted to show you guys a crane pick plan, just because it has this. Any crane that you look up when you're just trying to see how much weight it can pull, it'll give you this. This will tell you the radius of basically how far their booms can go and with how much weight they can carry out there. I believe that's actually on a table. So this should be about how much weight they can carry out times 10,000 pounds, based on how far their boom length is. Again, you'll find this on pretty much any crane that you look up when you're trying to designate a crane. A lot of the times, you know, your people framing the building will do this, but we did it just to show that we know how. It is something useful to know if you ever go through it. These are radiuses of basically crane pick locations, and I'll go back and show you how to do that. So we would basically just use the measurement tool. Go through, no measurement set. So typically, architects will put a measurement somewhere on the page. Sometimes it's in the title block, and sometimes it's wherever they call out like site plan. So to set a measurement, we'll just go 1 inch equals 20 feet. Something that someone taught me is you then find the biggest measurement you can find, and you just double check it to make sure that, like, where this will happen is the construction page gets scanned in and rescanned on a different size. I don't know why this one's different because it shouldn't be, but that's why you check. So you know that you can't really trust these dimensions too much. This one's a little bit closer. Okay. So you just want to check. So that works. And then on this, we have a couple different options. I don't know how often you guys use the measurement, but you can do like a length of a fence is good on this one, the poly length. And so then you can just keep it going until you press enter. Another one is an area, so you can get a slab area. And it'll calculate all this. And again, say I wanted to take this off as a slab and put in my legend, I would just name it like we talked about earlier, like slab, and then it would pop up in my legend. But the one that you want to use for your crane pick plan is this one, radius. So you get the center based on that one page that showed us how far we go and how much weight we have and what our biggest member is. So we had a glue lam beam right here. And so basically we're trying to make sure that we can support the weight of the glue lam beam that we're placing right here based off this distance. And that's how we're setting these crane pick plans. And for some reason, not doing that one right. This one. This is the one we use. I don't know why that's not working though. Typically it'll populate just these radius circles like we have here. And you can kind of see 75 feet, 75 feet. So you take that 75 feet, then you would find that over here and just basically, you know how heavy your heaviest member is and just make sure that it works. There's always a big safety factor on these, but still you don't want to go against what the chart says or else you have to do a special pick plan. And then there's some websites that let you do it as well and they'll calculate it. This is actually based on the Revit model that we made. And then we just threw it in SketchUp and just showed a diagram. It probably is even picking up a member there. Not necessary in real world, but just something different. but yeah, I like this example. I like that it shows phasing and everything, and just how you're moving some of the stuff around. You want to move it around the least amount as possible. As far as site logistics, I wanted to show you guys a couple tools that I have used before. And so for us, this is those apartments that I was doing. This right here was laid out wrong, and it was surveyed wrong. And so we're on site, and basically what happened was this property line for this owner, he wouldn't sign his easement, so we couldn't put any of our sanitary sewer line on it. And the property line goes somewhere right here. They were stubbed out right against it, and there's no way for us to tell, you know, where this is. The parking lot's not drawn on this. And so what I would do here is I would go to this. I made a blank page already. I just wanted to show you guys this example. So I take a snapshot of this Google Earth, right? I'm suspicious that it was staked wrong. And then I'm going to go back to my utility plan that's showing me this. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to press that G, or again, this snapshot. And I'm going to take a snapshot of this. And then I'm going to paste this. And I know that exactly how I pasted this is to scale based on what's shown on this utility. This is showing 1 inch equals 10 feet. So I know that if I do not change the size of this construction drawing, then I could take measurements off this page. So I went to this blend tool that I showed you earlier when I was making those markups. What I'm doing right now is I'm just going to make it so that I could see this a little bit better, turn some of the stuff red. And we're pretty lucky because we have this underground, so we can actually match these pads. Otherwise, you're trying to match things like the street and that radius curve here in the corner. So then you just want to resize your snapshot image. And basically you play around with that until you get it. And then I already did it, because it might take a minute to do. And like I said, I was out there on site and I could see that this was getting stubbed out right here, and it was on the owner's property. And so again, my original problem here was I didn't know where we stubbed out compared to the parking lot. And I had a feeling that it was surveyed wrong. And so now I can size this, I can get it mostly right, and I can actually set my scale up for 1 inch equals 20 feet. And I can say, this was off. Oh, this is a wrong measurement. This is just a straight measurement tool. And I could say this was off by, you know, it's actually 5 feet, because this is 1 inch equals 20 feet. That's what this first page said. 1 inch equals 10 feet. Yep. So now I know that it's off by 5 feet. I tell the surveyors that they get back out there on the site, because that's a big mistake on their end. That's your reputation. We get it adjusted, and we lost about half a day on that, but got it adjusted as fast as possible. Just a way to, again, I would never trust a measurement down to the inch on this, but just a way to use site logistics, Bluebeam tools to lay stuff out, and try to just figure stuff out and answer questions that you might have. And again, I could see just where all this stuff's going to end up, which is nice. It just depends where your Google satellite view is at. You know, we're completely framed out on this project at this point. So this is satellite view was probably taken in June. I don't know how often they update it, but got kind of lucky that we could use it on that instance. Another way, if you don't want to size the Google satellite view, that'll show you, is if you go down here This will typically be in meters, but you can adjust it to feet. Then you take a measure distance. Just try to get that as big as possible because that'll dial in your calibration. And then screenshot this. And then we'll just remove these. Now here's my new screenshot with this Google Earth measurement. Again, it's not going to be exact, but I want to get a decent scale for my measuring because maybe I'm going to decide where I want a job site trailer based on this dirt lot. And that, so you can do a calibrate tool. So select 2 points. I know that that's 247. So I'm going to try to get that as close to the middle as possible. I'm going to go as far as possible. And then this is basically taking off how many inches on that page sheet you have. And I'm going to put 247.35. And now what I'm able to do, if I'm making a new job site plan, I can take this measurement. I know that's fairly accurate. Sorry, pressed a lot of wrong buttons. And you can change these. I'm going to make it 30 feet. Take this measurement. I'm going to make this 10 feet. That's my job site trailer. I know that's how big the one is that I want to order. So now I'm going to get this corner, go to this corner. I now have a 10 by 30 foot, relatively good scale for a job site trailer. Just based off Google Earth and plugging this into a blank sheet of paper. And this is good when the lot's really empty and you can get a good idea of, you know, how far back on this can I put it on the parking lot? How far will it be, you know, away from the actual buildings if I put it right here? Again, none of our drawing pages showed this parking lot, so we don't know that for sure where this is at. Yeah, like I said, just integrating your resources into Bluebeam. Bluebeam is a construction software, so if you think there's a better way to do stuff, it's probably actually on there and you're just not pressing the right button. So kind of just pressing around. I touched on it at the beginning, but this keyboard shortcut guide, really, really big, helpful tool for, you know, if you just have an hour, just go, I used to just go play on this in college and figure out what I can do. But yeah, one way I use it there, this is a different site plan. This is an apartment complex, about 200 units. Basically the way that we're using Bluebeam here is maybe we get 2 different subs that are going to frame these out because those subs can handle all of them. And we say, hey, you're framing all of these to sub number 1, and sub number 2, you're framing all of these. And we're just kind of going to designate that, put that in front of them. Someone told me that every error, every mistake in construction is typically a communication mistake. And Bluebeam's a really good tool that really lets us annotate stuff, whether it be, you know, a photo or anything. I could take one of just a screenshot of this and put it on a blank sheet of paper and make enough annotations to, you know, call out exactly what I need here and just communicate this as good as well as possible. Just make it so clear that you almost feel stupid for how much you're explaining stuff on these documents, because you just want to leave minimal room for error when you're communicating to anybody outside of your organization, anybody inside your organization. And Bluebeam is a tool that really gives you enough power to communicate all that. So that's kind of all I got. I'll leave it up to questions for you guys on any tools. I know I touched a little bit on like some takeoff stuff. And right now I use Bluebeam for taking stuff off a pretty good amount, but a lot of it is just document control and some of the site stuff. You guys have any questions on anything? Any tools, anything that you want to know? Does Bluebeam do this? And maybe I'll know if it does.
So I noticed on all of your site plans, you have activities. Are you doing that? Are you determining those based on milestones in your schedule, or what trade is being used the most currently?
Yeah, so this is going to be directly correlated with, this December to April. And you're just going to you're going to go in your schedule and you're going to see what activities you got going on during these months. And you don't have to put when you get to finishes, you'll probably have 10 different subs on site or more. So you don't have to put everything, but maybe just the bigger ones. I feel like the event center is probably a better example of this. They kind of sum them all up and finishes, that this is probably taking the place of 10 subs going in, cabinets, flooring, and everything. But yeah, there's basically what activities are going to be going on in your schedule through here. And then one thing that's nice is like we're mentioning hardscapes. This is the reason for the trailer moving. This is pretty much the reason for why we have this phase 3 is we have to move our temporary facilities to build this out.
So Wade, I have a question and it's related to the ABC competition. So actually I've got 2 questions. So all of these phasing sheets, did you have that in your binder? And then how did you present that? Because you could spend the whole time just doing this and more. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So all of these phasing, the total PDF that we presented was probably 100 or so pages, and these were touched on in the presentation by the mock superintendent, just because it is good for an owner to get an idea of how you guys are running the site. You're really trying to summarize it a lot faster than I did on there, but yeah, you do want to go through these phases, why you're phasing them the way you are, why you have this parking lot over here. Oh, this is actually kind of cool. I was on Google Earth looking at this today. And so this is how it was when we were doing it. This is their old pool, old dirt track. This is where the music place went. And then this is they got a new track. This is a project that was going on. And then this is the event center. So kind of cool to see that progress. But yeah, we basically touched on all of these, and it was a lot because the superintendent had to cover, 8 different phases or something like that within a very short amount of time. So you try to not rush through it, but try to explain your reasoning behind everything. I was trying to find the one where the site plan with the parking lot. I don't know where
So
that
you
went.
did go through it in the oral presentation.
Yeah, these phases were something pretty important. This is something we touched on, how we're not parking in the school's parking lot, how, we communicated with the church and they're going to let us park there.
And then you connected your schedule to the logistics plan.
Yep. Yeah, all these phases are directly taken out of the schedule. They give you an exact, like on this, they gave us when they needed this done. And so, yeah, we just linked this up to
So
the schedule.
I'm just talking to Matt here because he's going to be doing our schedule. And so when you're putting together, Matt, if we do it in Oracle P6 or in Microsoft Project, you're going to want to set up filters and sorts based on your phasing so that you could transfer it to a logistics plan like that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, it's
Those
a little.
filters are great.
I know, yeah. The other thing I was gonna ask you, Wade, is so the class I teach the building construction class, and then I also teach the project controls class, and in both those classes, we're gonna either work on a project together or we're gonna they work on individual projects. And one of the things that I said to them is that, for not knowing how to do a logistics plan, or if you're doing it on your own, one of the things that you could do just to keep it kind of simple is to have like a mobilization plan, your actual construction, and then, you know, how you plan to demobilize. Are there any other ways that you could simply suggest how to set a job up if you've never done this before, in terms of, you know, not as detailed as this, but, you know, on a simpler scale, if you're just getting any job out there?
Yeah, if I was to do a one-phase construction plan, the 2 sheets that I would look at are going to be basically your utility sheets. And then I would look at your landscaping site plan. And I would just try to basically put your job site trailer somewhere where it's going to be moved like 2 months at the end. So find a flower bed, find somewhere, right? So typically it's an L sheet and then like a C sheet. And you just want to find the ones that say like C sheet, site plan or something. And I would just try to put your temporary facilities to where you're avoiding stuff. And sometimes they'll have this whole building pad and everything. And so, you know, you can kind of correlate where you want to put maybe your laydown area if you have that option. If I was doing a very bare bones one, I would reference those 2 sheets.
And if you're, it's like your first time, would you just do it all on one sheet?
Yeah, I would just use it. I would use a civil one probably.
Okay.
And then like the landscaping one, I would just confirm where the flower beds are, planting places, if that's something that's on the site. But for this one, you know, we can even just this sheet. This is a sheet, an architectural site plan, and you can, you know, any site plan sheet would be good. But you can tell that, you know, trailer right here for the most part. Then just you'll have to move it at the end or something. But I would go for the overall site plan.
And Wei, are you still listening? I don't know if you're on here. or not.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, you know, I'm bringing you in here because, you know, something, you know, what Wade's done is a very, very detailed logistics plan. And it'd be sure nice if like in some of the, you know, earlier classes in our construction program, if we taught them how to do it on one plan and then we start building, you know, like the layers as we go through, so that when they get to the end of the curriculum, they're able to do things like this, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think what the way to talk about today is really progress that we need to have our students go through as they going from, you know, freshman to sophomore to junior to obviously senior capstone. The kind of like I'll say the complexity and also the comprehensiveness towards this point, what you're showing in the different phases is what we're expecting from our students when they actually get into the capstone projects. And I think it's a milestone for students to truly understand what does logistics planning mean is after they finish their first intern. That's when they truly, you know, those logistics planning truly makes sense to them. And so I don't know what's the best way to do this, because I know that in CM1 orientation class, students will do some site visits. They will actually get the chance to see the site for themselves. But we don't really talk about site logistics plan until I would say probably CM20. There's a little bit like CM18, we introduce about some site plans, site layouts, but there's no logistics aspects of it. So it's a static, right? You're just showing the site layout. So it's only layout, not really logistic planning. The logistic planning really did not really come into play until later in the coursework. So I don't know. I mean, you know, I think 116 maybe a place you can plug in some of the components there, and also some of the upper division elective classes, like the one you were teaching. You know, used to teach on 115, and also 170 definitely is a big one to teach those. But I think CM20, CM 134, 144. And 150, 151, they should all talk about site logistics planning. I think that would be very valuable.
Yeah, and I just think, you know, it'd be nice to intentionally kind of include this in the curriculum in, you know, in a module in these classes, you know, so that they're learning how to do this at a depth like what Wade is showing, you know.
Yeah, and also there's what it is showing here. Actually, it is not, you know, as easy as it looks like, because it actually is a combination of both the software skill. I know this is a bug, okay, presentation. touches upon, how do you actually use BIM to do this. But at the same time, the knowledge come into this, creating those logistic plans is not only just, which button to press, which line you use, implement. It's more about why do you do this? Why do you put, a gate here? Why do you actually design the traffic route this way? Why do you actually have, this lay down area type of site? All those considerations has to be taught in a way that students have actually got some working experience. It will be extremely difficult for us to explain to them why those considerations behind the scenes before you even put here graphically showing on here. I think that's the most difficult part. In a way, I don't know, when you go through a Colorado program, are you from CSU Boulder or actually Fort Collins?
Fort Collins.
Fort Collins, okay. So I don't know, in your in CSU's curriculum, I don't think there's a specific class that will spend a whole lot of time talking about some logistics planning, if not wrong, but maybe, I don't know. So can you maybe actually kind of, just help us understand, maybe, give us some advice in terms of what kind of classes, what kind of knowledge do you actually pick from different courses, so that way you understand and you'll be able to consider, very proactively when you actually plan for site logistics.
Yeah, this like you said, this when you do these ABC competitions, you have very in-depth knowledge of a project that you don't really have that throughout any other class, because you're touching on so many things. It really is. They always say that once you do an ABC competition, your capstone's really easy, because capstone is very similar, but on a easier level. But it's having this whole understanding of, the schedule. Your students can't just populate this. They can do a different phase, but they're not going to be able to pull these exact dates out of their schedule of, when we plan on moving to this phase. You can know that there is a phase 3. You can know that at some point you're just going to have to build this out, so you have to move your trailer and stuff. But this is pulled, integrated from a schedule, from an understanding of how you're going to schedule it. We never had a class where we went into a multi-phase site development plan until our capstone.
Yep. Thanks for sharing. But I think, Christy, if you have some thoughts there, in terms of when you say, I have students in CM 170, and later on, after they get through CM 170, they will need to step into the capstone. Before 170, if you think that 150, 151, 134, 144 actually needs to have other than more, maybe like a scaffolding, let's put it this way, that do something in the sequence that gradually increases its complexity. I think that would be beneficial. We could actually totally have some other classes, some other opportunities to have a faculty meeting to discuss this further.
Yeah.
But another thing I wanted to ask Wade is actually in terms of the project layouts and also the actual how to put this. And I guess when you teach using these presentations like this type, and they show the joins, they show the logistics plan to the clients, and doing the real meetings on the job site. Do you see any kind of over the years through your experience, do you see any great opportunities in an internship that actually be able to teach things like this? Or do you think it's kind of reasonable for us as a faculty member? We sometimes we actually send students to an internship with a company. We actually kind of ask them, what they ask the student to do. A lot of students get assigned to do RFIs, mostly a lot of RFIs. RFIs is the most common one. So logistics planning, I think it's a very valuable, and it's one of those things is a highly synthetic, because it's only just one knowledge point. It's so many. I tend to think it's extremely beneficial for all internship students to actually have, opportunity to do some sort of logistics planning, because they are at a site. It's the best opportunity, actually while you're there, go figure it out. I don't know, man. If you are a company, if you hire an intern, would you be willing to actually, train your intern to do something like this? I'm just curious.
Yeah, to be honest, I would never have an intern design a site logistics plan and then actually use it without modifying it, probably a fair amount. But if an intern like Anthony walked up to us and say, this Anthony Sousa interned at 4CG this summer, and say he was just like, hey, I noticed that we moved the job site trailer. Why is this? And if he now knows that some site logistics plans have different phases and he has to see them, I would definitely try to take some time to just kind of walk them through why we're doing this. Basically, a very short version, because we both be on the
Mhm.
clock of
Mhm.
why we're phasing this stuff differently, why we're moving stuff. I think Anthony was really good about not hesitating to ask questions. There's a project
Mhm.
manager here who's, in his 60s. He's been in his career a long time, and he was like, man, that intern really didn't stop asking questions and stuff. It's really cool. And he didn't say that in a rude way. He said it's really cool because I've dealt with so
Right.
many that get on site and they're timid and stuff. So
Right.
it's just preparing your interns to, ask the right questions. Like maybe they do go in and say, hey, are you guys able to show
Yeah.
me a site logistics plan? Not because I don't think I would have an intern make one of these.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you would not actually have that confidence in them at that point. But that gives them an idea. Now, Christy, so what we can do is actually in our summer intern course, we have those specific deliverables you have to fill out, mostly daily report, like weekly reports. We could actually add assignments in that internship course, ask students to actually present a site logistics plan for the phases they've been working on during the summer. We could actually ask them to do two. The one is actually at the very beginning of their summer intern. The one is actually when they actually finish their summer intern. To compare those two, I think with the help from this project managers and their supervisors, they should be able to actually present something and help us to understand what is their knowledge level about logistic planning. Maybe that's something we're going to try because it's
Yeah.
not that difficult,
That's a good idea because it would get them, I mean, obviously it's not putting the company in any danger of doing a bad logistics plan or
Exactly.
anything,
Exactly.
but it
Yeah.
forces them to use Bluebeam and to set one up, and know about how the project's set up. So I think it'd be a great little task for them to have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And
No,
folks
this is
who
great.
actually, yeah, and then
Okay.
this is wonderful. I mean, I just want to say, this is a very now, it's great information. And those, since we actually identify a few names that actually have done internship with those over the summer. So, I think, if we could actually integrate some of those in the future internship, that'd be wonderful. But, Wade, thanks a lot. This is very informative.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks, Wei. And I'm just curious, what time is it? We have a little bit of time. So from the students' perspective, what do you guys think of this? I mean, in terms of just doing a more comprehensive site logistics plan and seeing how it's connected to your schedule. Did it open your eyes? Like, oh, this is something I didn't know before. And, did the light bulb go on? What's some of your feedback?
Yeah, it seemed interesting due to the fact that we're doing something similar with 116 with Anthony.
Yes.
He's making us do something like that, probably more complex. So I don't know if it helped him.
Great, Tomas. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think it's cool. It's always good to see other people's styles. I know Wade's is probably a little different than the kind of style I've adopted, but I like seeing it, and it's very good to see other people's work. It makes you think more because you definitely presented a few things that I never thought of. So good.
Thanks,
I'll share.
Matt. Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, one thing I like is emphasizing starting from a blank slate and having to look at all this and analyze your surrounding area and then get the ball rolling from there. So because a lot of times in our coursework, through the span of like one course, you'll have one singular project where after a certain length of time, you can almost cheat and, digest the project in an unrealistic fashion. Whereas in the real life industry, you're not going to have that span of time. So I kind of like how Wade broke it down and like in his real life application, how he had to, start from scratch and do it in a timely fashion. So that's kind of nice to see.
Yeah, and Anthony, we are switching the curriculum around a little bit. And in our 150 building class, which you're in, we're going to do it together, a big project together, as a team, as a group. And then when you get to 170, which will come after that, you actually have to do a project on your own like this, like you've never seen before. Every single person is different. Like
Yeah,
Jacob's in that class. Yeah. Yeah. So we're kind of switching the curriculum around so that it kind of builds on this. And that's why I really made sure that my 170 students, there's a lot of them that are taking 170 right now, are in here to kind of give them ideas, because you'll probably eventually get there too when you take 170. And Garrett, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm still here.
You know, and you might not know this answer or not, but I know querying, you guys put your students through 2 different tracks. One's, you know, like a project engineering track, and one's a field engineering track. Do you guys include the site logistics in there, or do you not know?
I believe we do. I don't think that we actually have 2 strict tracks. It's more based off of whatever the student wants to learn about and what they see themselves doing in the future. And if they don't know what they want to do and don't have a set path, that's when we kind of give them everything. We give them from the office estimating, that sort of pre-construction standpoint, the field engineer, as well as the project engineer path. But yeah, so inside both the project engineer and field engineer path, site logistics would be part of that.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's good to know. And, you know, just you listening to Wade, it's so interesting because you're fairly, you know, you're a newer, fairly new graduate as well. You've been out there probably a little bit longer than Wade, but you're on the estimating side. And what I found was really interesting is that you used completely different tools than Wade does, and how like just massive this program is. Did you notice that? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, Garrett's probably going, oh, I didn't know all these things existed, you know? And I'm sure if you did a presentation on estimating, he probably would say the same thing, because I was thinking you use the toolbox a lot more.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, isn't that so? Yeah, so Wade, you might have to come in and if Garrett gives a presentation here, see what it looks like from the other side.
Yeah, I would be very interested to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I said, that everything is just from field experience and pressing buttons and stuff. So there's definitely, like I also said, there's always a more efficient way to do stuff. There's very low chance that you're doing it the most efficient way possible.
When it comes to site logistics, it's more of like an art form more than right or wrong kind of thing, because just like every project is different, every way that you can think about the site logistics is going to be a different thing based on the different how different people think. So everything's just going to be different. So there's no right or wrong. It's just trying to justify your reasoning for it and then kind of just moving with that.
Yeah, and if you do mess up, if you miss something like I even said, like this crosswalk thing that we had on the overall site plan, day one, you would have had someone jaywalk and it would have been like, okay, we missed that. Everyone's jaywalking. You make an adjustment, and typically, unless someone gets hit by a car day one, typically it's okay, and you just adjust as the project, requires it. It's all conceptual when you're first making these and stuff before you start construction, but you try to dial it in as best as possible.
Exactly. And those things always continue to change and grow as the life of the project goes on as well. So it's not like it's something that's set in stone day one and then never changes.
Yeah. And it's
So
very
it's-
low risk if you mess something
it's
up.
very, sorry to cut you, but it's very interesting to listen to both of you professionals to make comments on this, like in terms of like how project specific the site logistics plan could be, right? Depending on the project, its location, the site, and the phases of the project. So now I have a very practical question. I would love to have your inputs. So for faculty member, when our professors, instructors are teaching site logistics planning and trying to help students build knowledge and skills with site logistics planning. So in order to actually give students positive or actually very critical feedback or maybe constructive feedback, because you were just mentioning how diverse this could be, then it comes to this one critical question here is how we actually grade it, right? As I was saying, there's so many different ways of doing it. One way or another, they could work out, depends on where it is and when it is and how you want to do it and who is doing it. So in this case, maybe, question to Garrett and Wade, both of you. What would be some of the criteria you would typically use when you're actually being given, instead of actually you designing the sub-logistics planning, you've been given some other people's sub-logistics plan. What do you look at? What do you actually evaluate how logical, how rational the sub-logistics plan is, how reasonable it is? What are some of the things you would suggest that the instructor look into and also students need to pay attention to?
Well, I'll say, first of all, I don't think that it would be right to just have students turn in a logistics plan and then grade it based off of what's on the actual page. You'd kind of have to take it as a presentation opportunity and be able to actually pick their brain on why they chose what they chose, and actually put it to kind of an open forum for other students to challenge each other's ideas and kind of go based off of that, rather than just saying, oh, well, yeah, you missed your fencing, or you missed your temp toilets, or whatever the phase requires, and more turning it into like a learning experience of actual critical thinking rather than just creating one. Because that's what is important with site logistics, is the critical thinking behind it, not the actual document itself.
Yeah, I mean, that light bulb that goes off, like just watching a different classmate present and stuff, could be so beneficial. To actually grade them, you'd need to hear their, just how much effort it goes in. But for the students to really learn, if they were all to present these in front of each other, and just bring up things that they missed, that's stuff they can take to industry once they see 5 examples of different things people missed or better ways to do it.
In way in our 150 class and 170, and I would say probably 180, the 180 series classes, I know I do peer reviews in 150 and 170. Like in the 170 class, those of you that have me in 170, when you do your oral presentation of your project, you will have an opportunity for other people to peer review you. And that's one of the things that we do. Way is that, we'll take a look at the logistics plan or the schedule, and we'll say, explain to us how you put this together. And then I'll say, like, as peers, how would you guys have done it differently? So it ends up being a very collaborative process. And I think it's invaluable, like what Garrett and Wade are saying, that everybody sees it differently. And I think it's important for them to be able to explain how they did it versus having certain things on the page. Like I will give a rubric and say, make sure that you identified the muster point, the trailer, blah, 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 all these things, but how they set it up is going to be unique. So Matt may do it differently than Anthony, and we want to hear how they did it and how they could have done it differently and maybe better.
Yep, great. That kind of, I guess, Garrett and both, right, you're talking about, how we actually find a process that a lot of students to articulate about that thought process, critical thinking, as Garrett mentioned. I think that's something that kind of actually, makes me think about the size of the classes in the future, because, when you have a class with 40, 50 students there, it's almost impossible to do that. I do love the idea, like, Christy, you mentioned like peer review, and actually ask students to actually be able to present their findings, their work, but also have the opportunity to correct them once they actually receive feedback from the peers. I think that may be the best way to do it. But that gives us some idea. We definitely need to bring those feedback back to our faculty meetings and actually have discussions. How can we actually better prepare students for this kind of task there? Because it's a really common task. It literally what shows up in all kinds of competition. So it's a very critical. Thank you both for the inputs.
Of course.
Well, anything else, you guys? We're kind of getting towards the end here. We've got about 15 minutes, and so we probably should wind things down here. Any other questions? Comments? Things that you want to see?
I will say one comment I do have for Wade is like how I do like how you went in on more the off the layout plan kind of topics, where you mentioned more about site traffic and like just how normal people that aren't working on the site can actually still get around what you guys are doing, and like certain problems that you go through just with regular habits that crew members may have. So those are like some things I guess we don't really talk about a lot, at least early on in the program, when we learned about site plans and site layouts and other logistics plans. Like we didn't really mention a lot of that, like a lot of safety issues on site.
Yeah, the safety is going to correlate a lot with this. As far as like those cranes didn't even show control zones and stuff, but you have certain zones like within, I don't know, 10 feet of the crane that you want to set up. And sometimes you'll display that on your site logistics plan if you need. It's pretty detailed, but yeah, you're going to tie in safety a lot. Just crossing that street, everything, pretty important factor. You kind of have to assume Murphy's law, right? Like anything that can go wrong probably will when you're working with construction and just other people. So just try to make it as simple as possible.
Well, and I think, Wade, that's like, you know, even doing the ABC team, you know, August. So, you know, you might even consider being on a competition team, because these kinds of large projects, you learn how to connect your schedule to your logistics plan, to your safety plan. Like if you've got a muster point or evacuation route on your logistics plan, that should match what is said on your safety plan. So they all kind of like interact together. And I think you learn that more so when you're on like a team and you're doing a team project later on, either in the curriculum or if you're on an actual competition team. I think this kind of thing is invaluable, especially if you're on a competition team. You learn to a totally different depth, I think, than the classes.
Indeed.
How, you know, Wade and Garrett, I had a question actually. I saw that you guys had SWIP on there, or you had SWIP on your sweepy stuff on your I think it was on the demo plan. How often is that on logistics plan? Is it necessary or?
No, not necessary. And some civil plans actually have all that for you, like just erosion control plans.
And those that don't know what SWIP is, it's the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. And so a lot of times, you know, on a regular job, they'll actually have in your meetings every week and everything, talk about how you're making sure that, you know, you have this plan in place and the things that you're doing. And so that's what I'm asking about, how often that's put on a logistics plan.
Yeah, this one actually like gives you a site fence on this erosion control plan. You can kind of see those yellow marks. I talked about it earlier. That's just displaying a fence, different dash lines. This is dedicating like your construction entrance. And so the engineers are giving you all of this information, and then assuming this is a fence, and yeah, and you're just setting up your SWIP around that. So sometimes it's given, not always needed.
And I think, you know, I'd have to ask somebody that is, you know, like a Tykert or a Granite employee, but when you're doing a staging plan, especially for heavy civil, you're gonna, I would say, actually on every job site, I've seen a lot of, you know, discussion about their SWIP plan, but I'm sure on a heavy civil staging plan, which is like the parallel path of a logistics plan. Logistics plans are usually done on building projects, where a staging plan is done on heavy civil project. They're going to be done a little bit differently. So it'd be interesting way to have, you know, kind of a discussion with a heavy civil contractor and say Maria, you know, her teaching the 151 class and how we would do it differently throughout the curriculum, you know.
Oh yeah, I don't have any experience heavy civil. I'd be curious to see what their site plans look like too.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's something that definitely we probably should expose the students to a little bit more. is a staging plan. And they do, if you choose the 151 option, which is our heavy civil specialization, they're going to deal with that more. And it might be worthwhile to make sure that we have one of the bigger heavy civil contractors come in and really, you know, do a demonstration like this for heavy civil projects. Okay, you guys. Well, I think we're about at the end here. I just wanted to thank you, Wade. I thought this presentation was excellent. And I hope that you learned a lot from us, you know, just from the academic perspective. And I know we learned a lot from you. And I just want to thank you for coming in and spending your time with us tonight. And this will be definitely helpful for us, both in our classes and to take back to our faculty as well. So hopefully we can connect you in Wade as well, maybe for the projects that he's wanting to do in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Good turnout to all you students and stuff. You know, you're going to the right stuff. You're going to learn more talking to industry members than a lot of other stuff than, you know, a homework assignment. You're doing the right stuff by doing some extracurriculars and stuff. So just continue to go to this type of stuff. You'll be better off for it.
Well, thank you, Wade, and you're more than welcome to come and join us again for another one of these speaker events. We'll probably hit you up to the future for sure.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, you guys. Well, thank you so much, Wade and Garrett and Wade, for coming as professionals in the industry. And thank you to all of you students. And I hope you have a great evening. And if anybody wants to stick around, I'll stay after. But otherwise, have a great night. And I'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy.